Have you ever looked around your quiet home and wondered, is this all life is left for me? Maybe the children are busy. Maybe old friends are gone. Maybe the days feel slower now. And maybe, deep inside, you feel something you never expected after retirement: loneliness. But what if retirement is not the end of life? What if it is the first time life truly belongs to you? Today's story is about a man who believed his best years were behind him until one unexpected moment changed everything. And by the end of this video, you may begin to see your own life differently too. David Turner was 70 years old. He lived in a small town in America, in the same White House where he had spent almost 40 years with his wife, Margaret. Every morning looked exactly the same. He woke up at 6, made coffee for one, sat near the kitchen window, and stared at the empty chair across the table. That chair once belonged to Margaret. She had passed away 3 years earlier. Since then, silence had become David's closest companion. His son lived in another state. His daughter called sometimes, usually on weekends. The neighbors waved politely, but everyone seemed busy with their own lives. David spent most days watching television, walking slowly to the mailbox, and counting hours until bedtime. The strange thing was, he had worked his entire life waiting for retirement. For 45 years, he woke up early, drove to the same factory, worked long shifts, saved money, paid bills, raised children, and told himself, one day, I'll finally rest. But now the rest felt empty. One cold evening, David sat alone in his living room while rain tapped softly against the windows. The television was on, but he wasn't watching it. He looked around the room filled with memories and whispered quietly, "What happened to my life?" His eyes became wet, not because he was weak, but because he felt forgotten, and many older people understand this feeling. Sometimes aging is not painful because of wrinkles or gray hair. Sometimes it hurts because the world slowly stops needing you. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. David stopped shaving regularly. He stopped going outside unless necessary. Even small things felt heavy. One afternoon, his daughter Emily called him. "Dad, are you okay?" "I'm fine," David replied quickly. But she could hear the sadness in his voice. "Dad, when was the last time you spent time with someone?" David stayed silent, because he honestly couldn't remember. After the call ended, he walked slowly into the garage looking for an old toolbox. As he searched through dusty shelves, something caught his attention. It was an old wooden box. Inside were dozens of photographs, pictures of family vacations, birthday parties, camping trips, Christmas mornings, and one picture stopped him completely. It showed a younger David sitting beside Margaret on a park bench. Both of them were laughing hard about something forgotten long ago. On the back of the photo, Margaret had written, "Promise me something. Never stop living, even when life changes." David stared at those words for a long time. That night, he could not sleep. He kept hearing Margaret's voice in his mind. Never stop living. The next morning, something unusual happened. For the first time in many months, David woke up before the alarm. He shaved carefully, put on clean clothes, and walked outside. The air was cold, but fresh. As he walked through the neighborhood, he noticed things he had ignored for years. Children riding bicycles, birds singing in trees, a couple holding hands while walking their dog. Life was still moving, and suddenly David realized something painful but important. The world had not abandoned him. He had slowly abandoned himself. That realization hit him deeply. Later that day, he drove to a nearby community center. A sign outside read, "Senior activities every Wednesday." David almost turned around, his mind filled with fear. What if nobody talks to me? What if I don't fit in? What if it's embarrassing? But then he remembered Margaret's words again. Never stop living. So he walked inside. At first, everything felt uncomfortable. Groups of older people sat around tables talking and laughing. Some played chess, others painted pictures or drank coffee together. David stood quietly near the door, like a stranger. Then an older man with silver hair smiled and said, "First time here?" David nodded awkwardly. "Well, you survived the hardest part already," the man laughed, walking through the door. His name was Walter. That small conversation lasted only 5 minutes. But for David, it felt like sunlight entering a dark room. Over the next few weeks, David returned every Wednesday. Slowly, he began talking more. He learned that everyone there carried some kind of pain. One woman had lost her husband. Another man struggled after retirement. Someone else felt lonely because their children rarely visited. David realized he was not alone. And sometimes, healing begins the moment we understand that others feel the same pain we do. One afternoon, the community center announced a volunteer program. They needed seniors to help children with reading after school. David immediately thought, "I'm too old for that." But Walter pushed him gently. "You spent years raising kids and solving problems. Don't tell me you have nothing left to give." A few days later, David found himself sitting across from a nervous 10-year-old boy named Lucas. The boy struggled to read simple sentences. At first, Lucas barely spoke, but David stayed patient. Week after week, they practiced together. Slowly, the boy improved. One day, Lucas finished reading an entire page without mistakes. His face lit up with pride. "Did you see that?" Lucas shouted excitedly. David smiled wider than he had smiled in years. And something unexpected happened in that moment. David no longer felt useless. He felt needed. That feeling changed him. He began waking up with purpose again. He exercised more, cooked healthier meals, started gardening again. His home slowly changed, too. The curtains opened. Music played softly in the mornings. Dust disappeared from forgotten corners. Life was returning. Not because his problems vanished. Margaret was still gone. His body still aged. Some days were still lonely. But David finally understood something powerful. Peace does not come from having a perfect life. Peace comes from accepting life and continuing to move forward anyway. Months later, Emily came to visit. As she entered the house, she looked around in surprise. Fresh flowers sat on the table. Family photos were cleaned and framed. And David himself looked different. Brighter, stronger, alive. "Dad," she said softly. "You seem happy." David smiled gently. "For a long time, I thought retirement meant waiting for the end," he said. "But now I think it means finally learning how to live." Emily hugged him tightly. And for the first time in years, she stopped worrying about him. One evening after volunteering, David sat alone on his porch, watching the sunset. The sky glowed orange and gold. He thought about his younger years. The stress, the long work days, the endless responsibilities. Back then, he believed happiness would come later. But later had arrived quietly. Not through money, not through success, not through comfort. It came through connection, purpose, gratitude, and small, meaningful moments. David smiled as the cool evening wind touched his face. And in his heart, he whispered to Margaret, "I kept my promise." The truth is, many people fear growing old. They fear losing strength, losing importance, losing time. But age also gives something beautiful: wisdom. Older adults understand things younger people often miss. They know how precious time really is. They know family matters more than possessions. They know peace is more valuable than competition. And most importantly, they know it is never too late to begin again. If you are watching this today and feeling lonely, if retirement feels empty, if you feel forgotten or disconnected, please remember this. Your story is not over. Not at 60, not at 70, not even at 80. As long as your heart still beats, life still has purpose for you. Someone still needs your kindness. Someone still needs your wisdom. Someone still needs your smile. And maybe the next chapter of your life could become the most meaningful one yet. Sometimes happiness does not arrive like fireworks. Sometimes it enters quietly, like a morning walk, a new friendship, a conversation, a chance to help someone else. Small moments can rebuild a broken spirit. David learned that retirement was not about stopping. It was about slowing down enough to finally notice what truly matters. And maybe that is the secret to a peaceful and joyful life after retirement. Not chasing more, but appreciating more. Not focusing on what was lost, but cherishing what still remains. Because life is not finished until the final breath, and every new sunrise still carries possibility. If this story touched your heart, take one small step today. Call an old friend. Go for a walk. Join a group. Try something new. Open the curtains. Smile again. And never believe the lie that your best days are behind you. Sometimes the most beautiful season of life begins after the world expects it to end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who may need encouragement today, and subscribe to the channel for more inspirational stories that remind us all to keep moving forward, no matter our age. And remember, you are never too old to live fully. A few weeks later, winter slowly disappeared, and the first signs of spring arrived in David's small town. The trees that once looked dry and lifeless began turning green again. And somehow, David felt the same thing happening inside himself. Every morning now had meaning. He still woke up early, but not because he had nothing else to do. He woke up because people were waiting for him. At the community center, Walter always saved him a seat near the coffee machine. The children in the reading program smiled whenever he walked into the room. And for the first time in years, David stopped counting his remaining days and started appreciating the days he still had. One Saturday morning, Lucas handed David a folded piece of paper. "What's this?" David asked. "Just open it," the boy said nervously. David unfolded the paper slowly. It was a handwritten letter. The words were simple, but powerful. "Dear Mr. David, before I met you, I thought I was stupid because reading was hard for me. But you never got angry. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Now I like school again. Thank you for helping me." David stared at the letter quietly. His eyes filled with tears, not sad tears. The kind of tears that come when the heart suddenly feels full again. For years, David believed retirement had taken away his purpose. But sitting there with that letter in his hands, he realized something important. Purpose does not disappear with age. Sometimes it simply waits for us to rediscover it. That evening, David walked through the old park where he and Margaret once spent weekends together. The same wooden benches were still there, the same walking paths, the same peaceful lake reflecting the evening sky. He sat down slowly and looked around. Young parents pushed strollers nearby. Teenagers laughed while riding bicycles. An elderly couple walked hand in hand without saying a word. Life continued moving forward for everyone. And for the first time, in a very long time, David no longer felt left behind by it. He felt part of it again. The wind moved softly through the trees as he smiled to himself. "You were right, Margaret," he whispered quietly. Then he closed his eyes for a moment and simply listened. Birds singing, children laughing, leaves moving in the wind. Small sounds, ordinary sounds. But suddenly they felt precious. Because David had finally learned something many people spend their whole lives chasing. Peace is not found somewhere far away. It is built slowly, inside the heart. It comes when we stop fighting life and start embracing it. It comes when we forgive ourselves for growing older. It comes when we stop thinking our value depends on how fast we work, how much money we make, or how strong our bodies once were. True joy comes from connection, from gratitude, from helping others, from waking up each day with even one small reason to smile. As the sun slowly disappeared behind the lake, David remembered something he once heard many years ago. A meaningful life is not measured by how long you live, but by how deeply you live. And suddenly, those words made complete sense. When David arrived home that night, he did something he had not done since Margaret passed away. He turned on music in the living room. Soft old songs filled the house gently. Then, smiling quietly to himself, he began dancing alone, slowly, awkwardly, but happily. For a moment, he could almost feel Margaret beside him again. And instead of pain, the memory brought comfort. That was the moment David understood healing. Healing does not mean forgetting people we loved. It means learning how to carry their love forward while still allowing ourselves to live. Days became months. Months became a year. And David's life continued changing in beautiful ways. He started giving motivational talks at the community center for newly retired seniors. Many arrived feeling exactly how he once felt: lost, lonely, afraid. And every time David stood before them, he spoke honestly. "I know what it feels like to think life is over," he would say, "but listen to me carefully. Retirement is not the ending of your story. It is the beginning of a new chapter you finally have time to write." People listened because his words were real. He was not speaking from books. He was speaking from experience. One evening after his talk, an older woman approached him with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "Today was the first time in months I felt hopeful again." David smiled gently, and in that moment he realized something else. Sometimes the pain we survive becomes the very thing that allows us to help others survive too. That is the hidden beauty of life. Our hardest seasons often prepare us to become light for someone else. So if you are watching this right now, maybe sitting alone in your room, maybe feeling forgotten, maybe wondering whether your best years are already gone, please hear this clearly. Your life still matters. Your presence still matters. Your experiences, your wisdom, your kindness, your story, all of it still has value. Do not let loneliness convince you that your journey is finished. Do not let age make you believe you cannot grow, dream, laugh, or love again. Because some of the happiest people in the world are not young people with perfect lives. They are older people who finally learned what truly matters. And the truth is, a peaceful and joyful life after retirement is not created by having everything. It is created by appreciating what you already have: a grateful heart, meaningful relationships, good memories, simple moments, and the courage to keep living fully, even after loss, even after heartbreak, even after difficult years. Because every sunrise is life quietly giving us another chance to smile, another chance to connect, another chance to begin again. So tomorrow morning, when you wake up, do not ask yourself, "What have I lost?" Instead, ask yourself, "What beautiful thing can I still experience today?" That single question can change everything. And maybe, just maybe, the most peaceful chapter of your life is still waiting ahead. Thank you for spending these moments with me. If this story touched your heart even a little, please like this video, share it with someone who may need encouragement, and subscribe to the channel for more motivational stories that inspire hope, strength, and purpose at every stage of life. And always remember this: growing older is not the end of life. It is the beginning of understanding life more deeply than ever before.